Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, Dave Patterson, Graham Noble, and John Clark. And this is The Conservative Five, an online TV news production of Liberty Nation News. On today's episode, Mother Nature, October Surprise, how government runs a disaster relief effort in FEMA 0, American Spirit 3. How will Southeastern voters cast their ballot? We'll discuss in GOTV On the Line. And what the heck is happening over at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue? We'll talk about that in West Wing Smackdown. Finally, it's another quick fix to flex the brain in Just for Fun, Volume 58. All this and more coming up in this edition of The Conservative Five.
Spiritual rifle.
The misery that accompanied Hurricane Helene's path of destruction has spotlighted the ineptitude of the agency created to assist the victims, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. Its sole purpose is to respond to U.S. disasters. Somehow, again, that didn't happen, and the government was about a week late and a whole lot short on resources. Thank goodness for regular Americans that showed up and cleared a path to reach folks in need. FEMA has had its own set of issues going back to the 80s. One of the ones I remember most was under the Bush administration when Katrina hit, and the FEMA director was at dinner and didn't want to be interrupted. So I hope that's not the case here. But Dave, is it time to admit FEMA's usefulness has come and gone?
Wow, Sarah. Yeah, I believe it has. You know, it seems every time there's a broad area disaster, whether it's a hurricane, multiple tornadoes, floods, you name it, FEMA, the agency Americans depend on, always comes up short. I don't believe it's just the nature of government agencies to become bureaucratically slothful. FEMA has as its core value that it guarantees a substandard performance. The almost maniacal adherence to diversity, equity, and inclusion guarantees the agency will be run by less experienced, poorly trained, less competent, and less dedicated people. Since the emphasis for hiring and retaining its staff has nothing to do with those qualities. We learned that FEMA, while attempting to support Hurricane Helene victims, was trying to aid victims of other floods, landslides, tornadoes, and forest fires. And reports are that FEMA was trying to support 100 major disasters at the time. All of this while failing to maintain adequate staffing. The Government Accountability Office reported recently that 35% of FEMA's positions are vacant. In reporting on FEMA's management of its people, the New York Times, not a conservative rag, revealed that the Monday before Hurricane Milton hit Florida, of the 2,500 people in FEMA's Individual Assistance Division, only 4 could be deployed. Count them. 4. That is a failure of leadership and management.
That's amazing. It's a horrible number. What?
Well, one of the critical problems is, that the military cannot be deployed until the state or local governments are overwhelmed and ask for Defense Department help. This is a national security concern, if ever there was one. Can you imagine depending on FEMA if, God forbid, the U.S. was under a nuclear attack? Well, fortunately, Sarah, the Unified Military Combatant Command, U.S. Northern Command, is available to direct disaster relief in those instances. But FEMA is supposed to be supporting that combatant command. The entire disaster response system and processes needs to be reviewed and fixed.
Graham, do you ever remember when FEMA has done a great job post-disaster? I can't remember any of them. And maybe I'm just looking at it from a different angle right now, but I don't remember a time when they ever performed very well.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. You wanted me to say more than that?
Well, I kind of want you to elaborate a little bit.
Well, put it this way. In the 24 years that I've been in this country, I cannot recall a time when there was any kind of major natural disaster and FEMA's response to it was, to use your words, a bang-up job. Sometimes they've done kind of better than other times. They've been quick off the mark at times and got resources in place. So I'm not going to say that FEMA itself has always been a disaster on the scale of needing its own assistance. But have they ever done a bang-up job? I don't think. I think anyone would be hard pushed to say that they had, at least in my living memory in this country, the last 2.5 decades.
Well, let's follow the money, Andrew. They claim there's just not enough money to go around for all the climate change disasters going on. Do you believe that?
Okay, so I want to get a few cents in here because I know John's going to provide some excellent insight into this topic. So first, I'll say, to add on to Dave's point, that's a great opportunity to bring all the troops home from Europe, from Africa, from South Korea, and help them with the post-disaster recovery. Another point, too, that there was a survey conducted shortly after Hurricane Katrina and found that just 25% of the people impacted in Mississippi said the government was their most important source of aid. Just 25%. And on the economics front, too, everyone can blame FEMA, but I think the other important point is that the federal and state subsidized flood and wind insurance has exacerbated the situation by incentivizing the overbuilding in the coastal zones that worsen the economic impacts of these hurricane storms on their natural disaster. Now, when it comes to the money trail of the situation, I find it remarkable. So, as everyone knows, Trump, he made a point a few weeks ago saying that, all the money from FEMA is going to go to the illegal immigrants. Now, the media and the White House said, that's cuckoo talk. What the heck are you saying? Most of what he said was incorrect, but there is a kernel of truth, as in a lot of what Trump says. So, in 2022, White House Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, she admitted that quote, the FEMA administrators were using federal support and funding from the Emergency Food and Shelter Program to support humanitarian relief for migrants. Now, I looked a bit into this just to see if the mainstream media was fact-checking correctly. They were not fact-checking correctly because the whole EFSP, or the Emergency Food and Shelter Program, it was in 2019, the funds under Trump administration, ironically, went to illegal immigrants who crossed into the country illegally and were described as family units. Now, Trump tried to dismantle this program before he left office, but it did not happen. And instead, the Biden-era American Rescue Plan added more funding to this program. So, FEMA, for the last few years, has actually already been giving hundreds of millions of dollars in disaster assistance for illegal immigrants, even prior to Hurricanes Helene and Milton. So I think all of this, to put into context, shows that the government does not get its priorities correct. FEMA is a disaster. The government does not handle these disasters correctly, and America's foreign policy would be better served, and this adventurism and the resources applied to it would be better served back at home to help in these recovery efforts. So I hope I put this into a neat little box, and now John can build upon it and provide his excellent take on it.
It was a nice little wrapped up package, Andrew. I mean, even I can understand your economics right now. Okay, Clar, who stepped up? I mean, let's face it, the Cajun Navy and a bunch of hillbillies did more with their backhoe capabilities and their pack mules than I think even FEMA could imagine.
Well, they did, and that raises the question of how we'll still vote, and the states are stepping up, and local people are stepping up, and when they're not stepped on by FEMA, what a panel discussion to follow, but I'll take the gauntlet from Andrew. I think I can add to that. He's trying to steal all the good stuff. Graham, we don't know that they haven't done a bang-up job sometime accidentally, so it is possible. And Dave, you're...
I'll concede.
Accidental success.
We're not omniscient. They may.
There's a possibility. There is also a possibility that Bigfoot is, swimming with the Loch Ness Monster.
And Dave the Hammer, I've rarely seen you hammer anything as you did that agency, so I was amused. But you're talking about DEI. It was a disaster long before it became woke. It was asleep. It actually was created in 1950 under the Truman administration. You remember, Dave. And they, as an underground bunker system for...
What an insult to Dave.
Hey, Florida's on a roll.
Hey,
All this is
I think
Haynes, and he goes crazy.
and I dish it out, and I'm being playful. Obviously, I'm very respectful, big career. But it is morphed into this massive. I'm agreeing with Dave, a massive bureaucratic ineptitude, and maybe it would be better to go back into that bunker system and hide to help us. Some people may have seen the Glenn Beck interview where he went up to some FEMA people, and there was no one there, and they said, "Hey, we're here to help as soon as their computers go on." And this morning, I heard on public radio, which I listened to solely to prepare myself for this interview, I have and they were talking, FEMA has issued a statement that it will not allow the politicization of its efforts to undermine its objectives. But it has been politicized. And the fact is, as Andrew points out, the agency did run out of money, and it has diverted funds to migrant causes. And in fact, it's now pulled $20 billion from its 2025 budget, or it would be broke now. So we're just borrowing more money. But I'll show you an example of the politicization by Forbes, of all places. They put out an article titled, "Trump FEMA Claim Debunked, Agency Not Running Out of Money Because of Migrants." Well, the day before, ABC ran something from New York as showing they had run out of money. They'd come out of more money. So in the Forbes article, this is what they say, though. If you read the body of the article, they say that over $1 billion was spent on immigrants, but Forbes says that's been through the agency's Shelter and Services program, a totally different funding port than the Disaster Relief Fund used to respond to hurricanes and other natural disasters. So they're literally, you could literally have written this article saying Trump was correct. They ran out of money and they diverted money to migrants. But oh wait, it was a little subject. This itself is bureaucratic. So I think the political football is being played. But what I would say is, I've never seen an administration under, it didn't matter blue or red. FEMA has a long history of exactly this sort of ineptitude. So, it's almost like the political football is being used like so many things that now you can't criticize it because it's, it's under this administration. But these problems have persisted for a long time, and they'll continue to persist unless we have a bipartisan response. And in the meantime, I think bipartisan citizens are running around on the ground. And I don't think people care about that when they're trying to help people.
Hey, Sarah, one thing, and I'm going to kind of fortify both John's and Andrew's comments by putting in some inside baseball comments, and it's the Boston Red Sox inside baseball, Andrew. So here's the point.
Shots fired.
Yeah. Here's the point. The people who talk about the budgetary issues forget the fact that DHS, Homeland Defense Department, is the parent agency. And that's the agency that deals with the illegal aliens as well as FEMA. They have the capacity to reprogram money from one area to another. It's a very simple process. They also have $73 billion in money that they have not spent. And they haven't spent it because they're incompetent. They don't pay their bills. Those bills basically run out of time, but the money stays there. It's obligated, but it's not spent. They can do a lot of things to recover that money, but they don't, because their management and leadership is, as we have said, incompetent.
And I think we should all give a shout out, to the American spirit for people to show up from states all over this country, including Alaska, to help out in North Carolina and Florida. A lot of veterans organizations, they were there. As soon as they saw that hurricane hit, they're like, let's pack it up and get gone. And they did. And they were on the ground. People came from everywhere. They mule packs, for goodness sake. And I think we should all give a shout out to the American spirit, because that doesn't happen in our government ever. Anyway, I'm just pontificating at this point. So, Helene's devastation and the federal government's faltering response cast a spotlight on FEMA's anemic and misguided management. And as we heard on panel today, and especially from Dave, if this is practice for national security situation, we, my friends, could be in a world of hurt. Thanks for watching. Thanks, panel. Helene left not only a swath of destruction across the Southeast, but left a legacy of problems to contend with in an election year. How will the folks be able to cast a vote? Mail service will be sketchy, polling locations have been obliterated, and getting in and out of a few places remain accessible only by beasts or by foot. Another October surprise? How to get out the vote. Are we looking at a potential low voter turnout in Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina? John Clark helped us out here. In this election, after all the country has gone through, going to witness the Southeast fall out of swing state importance?
Like a hurricane, the election's not going to stop and wait. And we have seen that the states, particularly those hard impacted, are scrambling to try to make sure that everybody does have access. The flooding in particular has been really bad. It's interrupted communications, travel, etc. I believe North Carolina's mail-in ballots go out tomorrow. So this really is kind of an urgent response. But the states are saying that they're stepping it up and that they will be able to set up temporary polling stations, that some of states have some technologies that they say that will help them to the extent they can be applied. And of course, the show must go on. So I think the whole nation is looking to that. But hopefully we still have a little more time and no more hurricanes before the election hurricane. And once again, the local people are stepping up. I don't think FEMA is going to install polling stations, but the states affected are certainly working very hard, and they say that they're going to be able to maintain the vast majority of the voting system.
Well, if somebody's sending out a ballot by mail, what if you don't even have a house anymore? Where do those conglomerate? Where are these people? What if they've been relocated out of state, temporarily?
Well, and then that depends on which states are doing, wholesale ballot mailing versus just absentee ballot mailing. And so that varies, I think, by state as well.
Dave, could this prolong voting for those in these areas? I mean, it'd be a good excuse to just go, well, let's hold off for a while.
Well, I don't know, basically if it would prolong the voting period in the areas hardest hit by the hurricane, particularly Helene. But it's going to make getting to the polls, as John said, a little bit harder, and obtaining absentee ballots more difficult. But retrieving the absentee ballots could be a challenge as well, and causing the counting to take longer. That's really what I think is going to be the problem, is getting the counts squared away and certified when the ballots are spread out all over the place, and it's very difficult to accumulate them. In North Carolina, for example, many of the election offices, the county election offices, which they've been destroyed or seriously damaged and are unusable in some form or fashion. And there's no doubt that, this general election is going to be a test for innovative election management, if you will, particularly in Georgia, Tennessee, and North Carolina, and Florida as well in many respects. And because these states have early voting, but collecting the votes is going to be a challenge, And well, some of the ideas I think that John alluded to is mobile voting centers, in many cases brought in by helicopter, but even getting to the mobile voting facilities is going to be a real challenge for a lot of folks. And so I think that this cycle's voting is going to be an interesting one. But one of the advantages, I might mention, of having the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers involved is that they've been very diligent in getting their heavy equipment in and to clear roads and highways of debris, and so that people have some possibility of getting to a voting center or a place where they can get food. Probably that takes precedence. Yeah, and so to your point, I think that it's going to be a challenge all the way around.
Is there any kind of precedence to rely on, Graham? I mean, don't we have something in place for this?
Well, given the amount of yelling that politicians do about how important it is to vote, and of course it's important for everybody to vote, but given the big brouhaha about let's save democracy, I think you would imagine that states, particularly states that are in, let's call it the hurricane zone, or even the states that are in the Midwestern states that have frequently hit by devastating tornadoes. You think that these states would all have mechanisms in place to deal with this in case it actually happens at election time. I think Florida is probably, in terms of getting people, getting the vote out and getting people to polling stations, I think Florida is probably going to is going to be the least adversely affected, because they just appear to be much more organized. I lived for a number of years in North Carolina, and I can tell you that it's not the best run or the best organized state at all, and particularly over in that western part of the state. Who knows? It's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. I'm just wondering if whichever of the two main candidates loses this election, if their opponent who beat them, whichever one it is, wins North Carolina. And let's face it, in most cases, the candidate who wins the presidential election did actually win North Carolina. But nevertheless, I think either of the candidates, if they lose, they're going to they're going to point to states like North Carolina, and they're going to say, my people didn't manage to get out to vote. I'm sure. So it's going to be so once again a natural disaster will be kind of politicized in a way. It's tragic. I feel for all of those people, but I think the states, as John said, I think the states will step up and do their level best to make sure everyone has access. Like I said, I think probably Florida will fare better in that respect than the other states, but I guess we'll have to see.
I guess we will. Okay, Andrew, you're giving me a side eye.
I'm just sitting here listening to all the great things from everybody.
I don't know. Well, maybe you were just winking at somebody. I don't know, but it looks like you need to talk.
It must be you in that blue sweater, Sarah. Anyway, so actually, it's funny to build on Graham's point. We can talk about election outcomes and how natural disasters impact them. There's been a lot of research looking at the results following these hurricanes, tornadoes, whatever the case. So, for example, one study by Cambridge, it discovered that the president's party is rewarded with an electoral victory if the government is determined to succeed in disaster relief based on polling numbers. So, in that case, what do some of the latest polling numbers show? So, they're mixed. So, let's go for one of them. One of them is a recent CBS News YouGov poll, and it showed that voters were split on how the Biden administration has handled hurricanes to date. But then there was another one. It's a Data for Progress survey, and it found that only 30% of likely voters thought the government provided the right amount of support to Americans for disaster relief. So these numbers should be interesting heading into the November election, and to see if it will weigh any at all. And maybe the exit polling data, maybe that will show us what voters thought of hurricane relief efforts in Florida, North Carolina, all these storm-affected states on election day.
No, we're all spitballing here. Liberty Nation News may not have all the answers yet, but we will, and we'll let you know what we find. Thanks for watching, and thanks, panel. Oh, have we had an election year of revelations. Who knew that Joe Biden was in serious cognitive decline till the press and high roller donors to the Democratic Party let us in on the secret? Well, all Americans that weren't in denial knew, and would have thought that, and who would have thought in such a year as this, that the most unpopular vice president ever would rise to the top of the heap. It was more of a shock. But now the truth in the West Wing is bubbling out of the cauldron and making the Harris camp squirm just a bit. Graham, so the West Wing is saying the quiet part out loud these days?
That seems to be the case. Certain West Wing insiders, or generally White House insiders, apparently are kind of, spilling the beans to the media that all is not well over there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And I think we should all be quite honest about the root causes, as Kamala Harris would say. And of course, in this case, the root causes are that Joe Biden is probably very bitter, and also the people around him, his allies within the White House and around him in general, are bitter about the fact that he did not himself make the decision to pull out of his re-election campaign. That was forced upon him by the elder statesmen of the Democratic Party, and for them to suggest that it was any other way is just it's silly. It's we know he was forced out basically, and I'm sure he's bitter about that. But I will tell you another decision that I firmly believe he did not make of his own accord, and that was picking Kamala Harris to be his vice president in the first place. That I believe was also forced on him. And why? Because Kamala Harris is a woman of color, and obviously the identity politics crazed people at the top of the Democratic Party and within the progressive movement decided that she was the only choice. And so I believe Harris was actually kind of foisted on Joe Biden to begin with, and perhaps they never really got along at all.
But he's racist. I don't think he'd like that.
I don't think he's ever been fully running the show at all from day one anyway. And so he had a vice president that he possibly would not have been his choice. And now she has supplanted him as the 2024 presidential nominee. And I'm sure he's bitter about that. And recent events seem to suggest it. For instance, him scheduling a kind of almost like an off-the-cuff press conference just as Kamala Harris was taking the stage for a campaign event in Michigan. And then there was they were talking hurricane relief maybe about a week ago or something. They were talking emergency management, and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden were both attending that meeting, and Kamala on a couple of occasions attempted to kind of interrupt Joe as he was speaking, and he actually kind of went, hold on a minute, no, I'm speaking now, and so I think the tension is kind of obvious. I mean, this is more than just, I think it's more than just kind of gossip, and especially when you got Axios, because Axios is hardly a bastion of conservative or Republican or MAGA, ideology. And yet for Axios to come out and really kind of like blow this open, that there's all this tension going on between the Kamala Harris camp and the Biden camp. And I think what it is that Kamala Harris, she's attempting to act more presidential, or to give people the idea that she's really the one kind of running things now. And I think Biden probably, and the people around him, resent that very much. I mean,
let's face it, the Biden
that's just speculation, but it seems like
they've got to find a new job regardless of what happens in November. Biden staffers will be unemployed on January 20th.
Well, it's remarkable. To build on what Graham was talking about, I loved it the other day. I found it so comical when a reporter asked Joe Biden, Ron DeSantis said Kamala Harris claimed that Ron DeSantis didn't take her phone call, and then Joe Biden said, Ron DeSantis done a great job, and I always talk to him, and he's been wonderful, and he has my personal phone number, and that was absolutely hilarious. And when he keeps connecting Kamala Harris to his policies, saying how she's been instrumental in devising all these policies that people hate, that's also him just to the bus, and that's the real October surprise.
I would want to add
The
one quick thing.
hurricane.
Before this goes out of my mind, I just want to add one little thing here, and that is that our executive editor, Lisa K. Dono, wrote an article recently on the pages of libertynation.com where she mentioned that possibly there were people in the media, the left-leaning media, who are almost starting to wonder if Joe Biden doesn't secretly want Donald Trump to win the election. And that seems like a bizarre thing. But you know what? It's not so bizarre, because here's the thing. If Donald Trump wins the election, then Joe Biden will always be able to say, I could have won. If it had been me, if I was in there and if I had ran, I would have won. But no, Kamala Harris ran instead, and look at, she lost, and forever he'll be able to take that away and make that claim, whether it's true or not. He will be able to make that claim. So the kind of the secret desire maybe that Trump wins. I mean, I've got some other theories on that as well, but I don't want to drag on what I'm saying in this segment.
No, because Dave's going to talk to you about, you said it, sabotage, or Andrew said it. I don't know which one of you said it, but I kind of wonder if Jill has a hand in any of this. But anyway, Dave, does it look like sabotage, or is he just, suffering a little bit in his mental state of mind?
Well, there is the possibility that it's not only sabotage, but dementia and apathy all rolled into one. And, when you consider that President Biden's staff, they write all his talking points, and, they might just be a little peeved at, the chattering elite class has just kicked them off their meal ticket and kicked them to the curb. So the staff may want to get even with particularly the younger sycophantic types, believing that there's always another administration in the future. So if we lose this, not to worry, we'll go down to K Street, get a job, and come back in 4 or 8 years. Biden may not actually, he may not even in his diminished cognitive state realize what's going on. Just reading what's on the teleprompter and sometimes reading the stage directions as well, pause, turn page, is, it's really his only responsibility these days, if you think about it. And then there is an understandable apathetic malaise that is at work, and he's just tired of the fight. Wife Jill is upset to be unloaded from the White House. Son Hunter has confessed as guilty to crimes, and he's going to have to deal with the age-old problem, to pardon or not to pardon. It's a heavy burden. And on top of everything, George Clooney doesn't return his calls. Yeah. This is a disappointing time for the president. I'm pretty confident.
Well, I understand that, but why now, John Clark? Why now? Because it's, he could have started this in July and created all sorts of problems, but he didn't. Now he's just doing it now. Why now?
Well, I won't disappoint you that I have some insights to offer. In fact, I'm chopping it to bit because of the things raised. And you've all hit on some important points.
Back to the horse things. Good grief. Okay.
Well, back to my dentist visit this morning. The Novocaine is wearing off, so I'm getting active. But to tie some things together, some important points have been made by all here. The term legacy has been discussed. So I don't want to be too mirthful as the Trotskyites and the Leninites start to trash each other. And Lisa's article was great and didn't go into the Pelosi, Obama divisions. Maybe the first signs of something wrong, smelling wrong in this administrative Denmark was when Joe Biden put on a Donald Trump hat at an event. And that just seemed so bizarre at the time, and we might have written it off as some sort of cognitive lapse, but it looks increasingly like...
Didn't he also sign the hat? He signed the Donald Trump hat.
He kept it too, so I don't know. But that's, regardless, we see a video, unless it's AI created by Musk, that he actually did that. And that just doesn't seem like a really good move. And here's where we're going. It's a legacy thing. Some may recall the Hur report. And if you read the Hur report, this is about Joe Biden having documents at home that he shouldn't have. He was determined to keep those documents because he was writing about his legacy. He absolutely believes that he has this tremendous legacy, whatever that is, and now it's being trampled. And as Kamala Harris says, I'm not really part of that. And she's changing all of the messaging from what she's been part of. I think he takes that as a personal attack on his legacy of sorts. And so there are rumblings here, and the whole thing is so bizarre. It is kind of fascinating. I don't want to sound callous here, but I mean, really, if you look
kind of do.
Well, I think they're pretty callous to him, and that's what he's responding to. And I think we're seeing ego being elevated above country. And yes, he would let Donald Trump win, even though it's the end of the universe as we know it, so that he'd be vindicated. That's very possible. We're speculating. But what we see is also another point Graham made. Axios is covering this, kind of like the decline of the president. How far does the truth have to go before even the mainstream media can't gaslight or ignore it anymore? These divisions, I think, have been under the surface for a long time. And it's very relevant for the election because it's about not just personalities, but to the extent it is, it's about messaging. And Kamala Harris has been very much flip-flopping frantically to try to distance herself from the failures of the administration that is now taking every opportunity to step out in front of the microphone and say, oh, yeah, she was there in every room, every meeting, Afghanistan, the border, everything. She was border czar, by the way. So the effort to completely rewrite history is very difficult when the left hand and the right hand are clapping like this, including, like Andrew pointed out, in Florida. So Lisa's article is great, but I think we're going to have more conversations because it really seems like the Democrats are coming unglued in these divisions. And remember that there are rumors that Kamala Harris may have been the source of the leaks that really did it in for Joe Biden when he was proclaiming that he was fully prepared to run again and win, and nobody else could win. And so I think there are a lot of things going behind the scenes that are starting to break through the curtain so much that even the mainstream media just can't avoid acknowledging.
Maybe Joe Biden awakened to the fact he was essentially run out of town by his own people. That'd make me mad. Why not take a moment here and there to stick pins in the hairstyle on my desk? Politics is a mean game for sure. Thanks, panel. We are back to have a little fun with the panel of curmudgeons and comics. Lots of curmudgeons today, by the way, so stay tuned for that. Play along, as the adage goes, because if you can't beat them, join them. It's a C5 game of trivia, brought to you by Liberty Nation News' own Kirsten Fricker. And Andrew Moran is on the game board. Grumpy Andrew Moran.
Welcome to another round of C5 Trivia, the game show that flies off the handles faster than the Kamala Harris campaign whenever President Biden throws her under the bus, or whenever you tell Donald Trump that tariffs are a bad idea. But things are not all that bad. Reports say that there are simultaneous coups unfolding in the Congo, Burkina Faso, Benin, and Myanmar. And we all know the one man who is the mastermind of these efforts. I'll let the viewers decide who this man is on this panel. But so as the man says, how we solve these challenges will help me make the next president who's president. By the way, anyway. So as usual, please, let's read the questions and answers first before you lovely people, and by lovely I mean Sarah Cowgill, chime in. And I will not say anything negative about the trivia chief, Christina Booker, or Booking, as our own Kelly Ballard has called the shtick. So, question number one. In government assistance such as food stamps, Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare are known officially as 1. Government transfer payments, 2. Assistance for the unemployed, or 3. Government support systems.
3.
Yeah.
I guess A.
Hey, yes, correct. Mr. John Clark is correct.
What's it called?
Government transfer payments. But they all seem, I mean, as someone who writes about this stuff all the time, they all would seem fine. I mean, I would not, if I were an economics editor, I would not say that person's wrong. Anyway, moving on. Question number 2. Harvard University, just before the start of the 2024-2025 school year, dropped more than 30 courses. Many of them: 1, left-leaning courses; 2, religious-based courses; or 3, history courses.
A. Left-leaning courses. A.
Left leaning. Yeah.
Yes, A, and that goes to John Clark.
Really?
Yes, A, left-leaning courses. And to read more on this, Sarah, you can be sure to read Don't Call Me Corey Hart Smith's excellent article on this subject. So, question number 3. How many tornadoes touched the ground before Hurricane Milton made landfall? 10,
5,
15, or 19?
Oh, thought it was. My option wasn't there. 17?
15.
That's not even one of the answers, but no, the answer is 19.
Well, I guess I was talking through your rambling, so I'm sorry. What were the answers?
Not many, yeah.
10, 16, and 19. And according to Kirsten Brooker, it's 19. So, question number 4. Nobody gets that. Nobody gets that. Okay,
I said 17. I was the closest. I can name that.
Oh, there's no close. This is horseshoes. Stay in your lane, buddy.
So John is still leading the troop by with 2 points. So question number 4.
Never happened again.
This, I guess, will go to Dave automatically. So let's move on. Kidding. Question 4. Regarding the Israel-Hamas war, Pentagon officials are beginning to question: 1, which side the U.S. wants to support; 2, if U.S. forces are helping or hurting the cause; or 3, if Israel is willing to communicate plans with the U.S.
You wrote it.
Gee.
Well, also one of the consideration was if Dave should be leading these operations in total, but who knows? But no, actually, the question is, the answer is B. The U.S. forces helping or hurting the cause, and it goes to Dave with 1 on the board.
Thank you.
Question 5. Jill Stein, a self-proclaimed defender of democracy, has been a member of what political party since the year 2000?
Green Party.
Green.
In middle school. Is it Democrat, Green, or no labels?
2B.
I think Sarah got that one. So, Sarah, you got 2, 1, and 1. Question number 6. After a moment of silence to honor the victims of the July 13th shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania, opera singer Christopher Macchio performed a rendition of
Ave Maria.
Ave Maria.
Habanera or
I see we're just shouting out the answers now rather than waiting for them.
It's Ave Maria. I got that. I got it.
Jeez Louise. Graham has asked me correctly. Wait for the answers.
I thought it was.
Yes. Sarah.
It's a small world after all, I thought.
It is. I have 2. I got that.
You know what? I was thinking of opera.
I've got 0 because I'm the only one who's playing by the rules and not yelling out the answer.
That's right.
Sorry, Graham. I started jumping in too.
Okay. Graham gets a participation trophy. Graham gets a participation
Graham's just going to get
trophy.
all the points.
I'm going to win because I'm the only one not breaking the rules. Yeah.
But
It has any American. Well, you're not really American, but we break rules. That's who we are.
All right, question 7. Let's toss in some economics here. Yes, I know Graham was going to get this here. Despite the billions in taxpayer subsidies, what sector has lost nearly 50,000 jobs so far this year? Has it been leisure and hospitality, manufacturing, or government?
Obviously, it was manufacturing, right?
Yes, yes, Graham with the point. And I'm only doing that because John was late today, so he gets deduction. Question 8. What name is given to firearms that are homemade and not registered with the federal government?
Ghost guns.
Ghost guns.
There you go, Graham.
C.
Spiritual rifle.
Ghost guns, yes.
Ghost guns.
Spirit weapons. Seems like, something's the 2S LGBTQIA stuff. Anyway, question 9. Okay, so points. Sorry, let's update the points. Sarah has 2, John has 2, Graham has 2, and Dave has 1, I believe.
I'm working on it.
So, question 9. Given the apparent demise of Kamala Mentum, what Democratic heavy hitter has been enlisted to try and salvage as many Democratic votes as possible? Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, or Bernie Sanders?
Obama. Barack Obama.
All right, here. Okay, we have a tie. Oh, we have a tie.
Stuck in there with that one.
I didn't want to.
I
They
declined.
also tried to throw in Bill Clinton the other day, and he completely threw Kamala Harris under the bus. Unintentionally, I'm sure, but totally threw her under the bus regarding the border situation. That was so funny.
What'd he say? I missed it.
He said, well, he said, well, look, in Georgia, that young lady who was killed by the immigrant, and he was talking about, Laken Riley, I believe her name is.
Yeah.
And he said, and of course, if these people coming across the border have been vetted, then that might not have happened.
No.
Don't you hate it?
Apparently nobody likes this woman.
So anyway, the last question, and in the spirit of postseason baseball, we're in the middle of postseason MLB action, baby, and so the last question will be in relation to that. Whoever gets this wins the top prize of the day. So, question 10. Finally, in best of 7 postseason series, teams to win each of the first 2 games of the series have gone on to win the series. Is it A, 95%, B, 84%, or C, 51%?
95%.
Right, I missed one. No.
B.
Yes, 84%. And Dave comes back and wins, just like hopefully the Guardians will come back and beat the freaking Yankees. And that is all today, folks. I send it back to
Guardians.
Eric Algill.
Sorry. Anyway, okay, well, we've had another bunch of fun on your time, people, so we hope we ended on a high note, and hopefully you at least had some fun, and thanks for playing again. If you ever want to play on your own without Andrew, just go to libertynation.com and test your knowledge. That's where you find this. Thanks, guys. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform. YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, we're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation News has its own Roku channel, where you can see all of our TV productions. Now, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for Free Thinking, Free Speech, libertynation.com.